Today we're discussing a case study of a British expat oil executive who wants to retire in the UAE. I'm joined by two guests, Marie O'Neill from EER and Matt Duncan from Druces. We're going to set out the scenario in a moment, but first of all, I'd like to come to my two guests for a brief introduction. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you, David, and thanks for having me. Delighted to be here. So my name is Marie O'Neill. I'm the co-owner of EER, Corporate Services, Immigration and Relocation provider based in Dubai. We offer services across the Middle East. So basically we help clients who want to move to the Middle East, particularly the UAE and Dubai for residency, structuring needs. We can help them with structuring, getting their residency and also relocating them and their families to the UAE. So we work with private clients and we also work with large corporates.
Fantastic. And Matt, what about yourself?
Hi, yes, it's Matt Duncan. I'm a partner with Druces based in the City of London. I'm in the private wealth team. So my focus essentially is on inheritance tax planning for clients, succession issues, and I have a particular specialism with Middle Eastern clients who have foot camp in perhaps the UAE and the UK.
Fantastic. So just to set out the scenario in a little bit more detail, we have Charles Smith, who's 60 years old. He's a retired oil industry executive. He worked across the GCC for the last 25 years. He's married to Sarah, who's 55, and they have 3 adult children aged 30, 27 and 24, all of whom live in the UK. Charles was born in the UK where he met and married Sarah. He has 3 rental properties in Devon worth £900,000 in total. He also has a £750,000 overseas pension plan in Guernsey and £1 million saved in an offshore investment bond wrapper in the Isle of Man. During his working life, he worked in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but wants to now retire in Dubai. Charles and Sarah love visiting the UK for the summer months, but have no intention to return to live in the UK. So Marie, does this sort of scenario crop up for you regularly? Is this the sort of client type you might recognise?
Yes, definitely, David, and we deal with similar clients all the time. Thankfully, a few years back, the UAE introduced a retirement visa. Previously, there were no options. We had, there were expats living in Dubai for 10, 15, 20, 30 years in a similar situation to that. And when their employment finished, they had to leave and there was no option to stay. So thankfully now we have the retirement visa. Yeah. So relatively straightforward and easy to stay. So there are basically 3 criteria and you need to match one. So it is having a regular income of 15,000 dirhams or more a month coming in. You invest 1 million dirhams in a property. Or you invest 1 million dirhams in a fixed deposit account in the UAE. So if you have one of those 3 options, then you can avail of the retirement visa.
And the pension income that Charles would have a disposal of through the offshore pension plan would be one option. Yeah,
so he could invest that in a property in Dubai, or he could put it in fixed asset in a bank account in the UAE and then avail of the retirement visa. And then Charles would be able to sponsor his wife under that visa.
Okay, so it's a joint application, is it? Or how would it work for...
It's a single application, the retirement visa for Charles, and then he would act as a sole sponsor for his wife, a separate application then under his retirement visa. Okay. So a relatively straightforward process. From a cost perspective, the retirement visa is around 7,000 AED. It's a 5-year visa. From a time perspective as well, it's 5 years, which is relatively convenient. Another option for Charles could be the golden visa. So that's a 10-year visa, and obviously, you have a longer period of time, so it's more convenient for people. The golden visa, Charles would have 2 options. He would need to have 2 million dirhams in a UAE property, or put 2 million dirhams in a fixed deposit account for 2 years. So obviously it's better, it's a 10-year visa, but the cost of that and the investment is obviously a little bit larger than the retirement visa. So he would have 2 options. I would recommend the retirement visa would be the more cost-effective option for him, but there is definitely the option of the golden visa as well.
And then he would make a renewal on 5 years based on circumstances?
Yes, as long as his circumstances are similar, either the 1 million in the fixed deposit or in the property, or he has a regular income of 15,000 dirhams or more per month, then he could renew for an additional 5 years.
Okay. Okay. And how long would the visa application take if you did go for the retirement visa?
Yeah, once we have all the documentation, really anything from 2 to 4 weeks. Visa applications and processing in the UAE are relatively quick if you have all the documentation in place.
Okay, great. And what about finding accommodation? I mean, imagine finding property. I mean, they visited Dubai, they know the region, but, how would you help them navigate the property market locally?
Yes. So, David, we basically would assign a relocation consultant. So they would do a home search with them. And what we would recommend is, even though they know Dubai and know it quite well, they've traveled there on holidays, there are various areas in Dubai you can live. So it depend on a lot of factors, what their hobbies are. Do they want a villa? Do they want an apartment? Do they like beach life, or do they like more desert life and camping? So a relocation consultant would ask them all these questions, take them on an orientation tour around Dubai, show them the different communities, show them sample properties in the communities, sit down, have a chat with them, then fine-tune down to maybe 1 or 2 areas or communities they want to live. And then our relocation consultants would deal with real estate agents, set up appointments for them, be there to offer them unbiased advice, and help them choose their dream home, whether to buy or to rent, and then work with them through all the documentation, the rental contract or the sales process, help them to connect to utilities and get settled into their new home.
Because for an older couple with grown-up children, an apartment might work equally well as a villa, or just the convenience of having
and they may want to travel and they can come and go. Yes. So everyone has their unique requirements, and we would basically, our relocation consultant would sit down, get all those requirements with them, help them work through then what they want, show them different options, and fine-tune down then to the property that they actually want, and take the stress and the hassle out of it for them.
And are you finding that the retirement visa is allowing more of a community to build up around people who are retiring in similar circumstances, rather than them having to, as you say, once they finish their working life, leave?
Yes.
So these clients can be catered for in accommodation as well, because there's more people looking for similar
Definitely. And we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of people that would have traditionally left Dubai after a long career there, now staying in Dubai. And there's certain areas where you would have more, say, people wanting to retire in those areas as well. So there's definitely, areas and opportunities for people,
And the golf is amazing, isn't it, in Dubai? So if Charles is into his golf, there's lots of options. But there's lots of options generally for leisure, aren't there?
Definitely. And if someone has lived and worked in the Middle East there for 20, 30 years, they're used to the lifestyle. Absolutely. They're used to having those golfing facilities. They're used to the weather, the leisure and the social facilities that are there. So it's ideal. It's very hard for someone having worked that long, not having the option to be able to retire in a country and having to leave and adjust then to another, probably maybe going back to their own culture, but it's like adjusting to a different culture again, because they're so used to the expat life.
They've lived so long outside the UK, absolutely. And in terms of what you can help people with when they're relocating, I mean, obviously it's extremely different to visit Dubai and stay in a hotel to actually have that as your main base. All the hassles around connecting utilities or banking or things like that. I mean, how do you sort of problem solve some of these niggles?
As we all know, being a tourist in a country and then living and going through the process of living is very different. So everything, we offer settling in service. So everything from opening a bank account, getting their driver's licenses, connecting the utilities in their property, registering their tenancy contract with the land department. So all of that we will take care of for them and just make sure it's a smooth and hassle process. We just get the documents from them. Sometimes they will have to accompany us to some of the appointments, like the driver's license. They will have to come with us, but we will handhold them through the whole process.
And I guess if they're already in the Middle East, they might be able to, on banking side, have retained relationships, which gives them a more ease than if they're coming in from outside, from Europe or elsewhere.
Yes, definitely.
And then also on the logistical point, if they've already got a home set up in Qatar at the moment where Charles is finishing his employment, what are some of the logistical issues of moving house like that?
Yes, so they're physical goods. They might have pets, they might have cats, dogs. So it's arranging the movement of everything to Dubai. So for their goods, it would definitely be a shipment. So we could arrange that. We have a move management service. So basically, we would get the requirements, sent in a surveyor to survey their goods, and then we would arrange 3 quotations. We'll sit with them, go through the quotations, help them choose one, and then we'll manage and liaise with the moving company to get their goods from Qatar to Dubai. So not a long distance, or a relatively simple process. And then if they have Pets, cats, dogs or anything, we can arrange then for those to be also transported to Dubai, whether it's by land, sea, however we get them, we can arrange that as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Marie. And Matt, just to bring you in, I mean, with this kind of client, I mean, is it a common sort of scenario that you might have seen before in your practice?
Absolutely, and certainly, as we've heard from Marie, now we've got this new retirement visa. It's meaning that we've got UK clients now that perhaps would have had to retire back in the UK having worked abroad. They're now able to retire in Dubai or elsewhere in the UAE. And so we're going to certainly see more and more clients doing that, and they're going to need advice as a consequence.
Okay, and I guess the inheritance tax exposure in the UK is one of the things you'd be talking to Charles about. I mean, perhaps you could explain how you'd start to approach it.
Absolutely. So if you look at Charles and Sarah's situation, they've got 3 properties in Devon, which they rent. And so they've got assets physically located here. And as they're cited assets in the UK, they will be subject to inheritance tax. And that's something they need to understand. Just because they're emigrating and retiring in Dubai doesn't mean the tax situation goes away, and it's certainly something they'll need to look at before they move.
Thanks. And just coming in on a little bit more detail, I mean, the concept of domicile of origin, I think would be useful just to explain a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So the UK has a concept of domicile that perhaps other countries don't necessarily understand or recognise. And it's more than just residence. It's what you call your home, where your permanent base is, where you intend to indefinitely remain. So when somebody is born, they acquire a domicile of origin. And if your parents are married, you acquire your father's domicile of origin at that point. If your parents are unmarried, then it's the mother's domicile that you acquire. So if we assume that Charles and Sarah were both born in the UK to parents that were also in the UK, then they'll have a UK domicile of origin. And that's a very sticky concept and stays with them. They are able to acquire what's called a domicile of choice. So we're hearing here they want to retire in Dubai. So over a period of time, they will acquire a domicile of choice, perhaps in Dubai. And that's relevant for inheritance tax, because the way UK inheritance tax works is if you're UK domiciled, you will pay inheritance tax on your worldwide assets, wherever they're located. Whereas if you're domiciled somewhere else, then you'll only pay inheritance tax, UK inheritance tax, on your physical located assets here. So
is the length of time he's been out the country relevant in this scenario to that point?
It is, and actually the fact that now he can retire with a visa in Dubai helps, because prior to that, the UK government might look at someone spending a relatively short period of time in Dubai as not really wanting to have a permanent base there. And so their domicile of origin would be pretty sticky, and the UK government might want to tax their worldwide estates as a consequence. So obviously the more time he spends in Dubai, he's severing those links with the UK. And that's where we've got to be careful advising clients, because there are some links here. He's got his children here, albeit they're adult children, they're not dependents now. He's got rental properties. I'm not aware that he's got any other property that he would perhaps move into. But the more ties he has back to the UK, it's pulling him back all the time. And so the inheritance tax question can keep coming alive.
And how would he demonstrate the sort of that he's acquired this new permanent this new domicile of choice outside of the UK? Is part of the planning to like put that in place to sort of illustrate that?
Absolutely. So the more foothold he puts in Dubai, the better. So presumably we're assuming that the Devon properties are just rented. He hasn't got a property that he's going to be living in. He won't be registered to vote in the UK. He'll sever those sorts of links. He's obviously got the visa application that's going through, so he's got the right to remain in Dubai, which is important. So it's a matter of fact, where is his home? How much time is he spending in Dubai? And that's also key, that he's not spending more time perhaps back in the UK. He needs to be careful there.
And so as part of that conversation on estate planning, you'd look at the wills, what's in place, and then create new wills if necessary. I mean, how would you go about doing the will planning for a kind of client like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this type of client, typically, he probably hasn't done his will for some time. And I suspect the wills they have in place would have been done when the children were younger, which may now no longer be relevant because they're all adults, the children. And so there's a conversation piece. Well, actually, now your children are in their 20s and 30s. Do you want to potentially skip a generation? Are you wanting to pass assets down to, if they've got grandchildren or future grandchildren maybe on the way? So it's thinking about succession planning more generally, updating their executors. Their executors may have died, they may be too old, they may be inappropriate. The people who actually got to deal with their UK estate when they die, are they the right people that are currently in the will? Those sorts of things need to be thought about.
And they need something specific to cover a UAE asset. So if they buy the property, how would the different documents fit together?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly, so the UK piece, if you've got UK property here, definitely have a will covering that. If they're going to acquire assets in Dubai, then I would recommend they use the DIFC will. So this is something that it's great for expats because they can have a will that deals with assets they acquire in the UAE countries and enables English law effectively to apply to their assets rather than Sharia law, which for a non-Muslim client is important to them that they have the freedom of disposition, i.e. they can choose how they want to divide their estate. So certainly in this situation, I would definitely be recommending they have 2 wills in 2 different jurisdictions for ease of administration and to make sure their planning is in place.
And in terms of exposure to other taxes, I mean, they mentioned spending the summers back in the UK. I mean, they've been non-resident for a long period, but how would they manage that exposure, and why is it important they manage their days in the UK?
Yes, it is important from typically for income tax point of view or capital gains tax. They don't want to become tax resident in the UK. So it's important they do the day count. They do watch how often they're coming over. I mean, typically a lot of clients will escape, won't they, in the summer months, June, July, August, to escape the heat and come back to the rain in the UK. So they need to keep an eye on the day count. And certainly if they're exceeding 183 days, that's an automatic, they're tax resident here. So that's a definite marker they need to be aware of.
But they're likely to have a decent allowance, aren't they? Because they're adult children, they don't have dependents in the UK, they're let property, they're not working. So
exactly.
But they've got to crunch the numbers and look at
exactly.
What's what.
So at least those ties aren't bringing them more into the residency issue. You're right. The only one will be the 183 days. As long as they keep under that, they'll be okay. If they don't work in the UK, as you say, they don't own a property here they're living in. Those sorts of ties, they don't have dependent children, so they're okay on those things.
But this would also apply if their health started failing and they went back to the UK. There's no exemption for, if you're getting treatment in the UK, your day count is what it is, isn't it? So they need to carry a strong awareness of that and what that would mean.
They do, absolutely. I mean, certainly we've seen with COVID and various other things that have been happening in recent times, that has affected people who have suddenly got marooned in countries that they weren't anticipating, and there have been some allowances for that, but I think going forward that's less likely. So if they do have ill health and they're spending more and more time in the UK, they do need to be very careful not to exceed that 183 days. And
what about the overseas pension and life policies? Would you try and tie that in the estate planning, make sure that in the event of death, those assets everyone knows how they're going to pay out and in what way?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, taking the pension firstly, obviously it's an offshore pension. It will be outside the inheritance tax net, which is good from that point of view. But again, pension trustees need to be aware that they're moving, just making sure their nomination letters of wishes are up to date, that the beneficiaries are properly mentioned, so the pension trustees know who they'll be paying to. And the same with the life policy. Again, hopefully it is written in trust, so it's outside the estate for inheritance tax. But again, who are the trustees? Are they up to date? Are they the right people? And do they know the purpose behind that life policy? What's it intended to do?
So it's a good time to align those policy documents as well with the broader
Absolutely,
planning.
yes. It's the whole piece, isn't it? Absolutely.
And if those overseas pensions and the life policies are invested in UK stocks, if Charles likes investing in the UK stock market through those wrappers, they wouldn't be caught by CITES rules because of the CITES of the wrapper, is that? I mean, you'd obviously need to look at it.
Yes, you would need to look at it, but on the face of it, yes, that'll be correct. Yes, which is obviously a big saving for them.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those perspectives, Matt. I mean, Marie, just to come back to you, looking at this kind of client, what would the next steps be? If you got sent this scenario, or Matt had this client he was introducing to you, I guess you'd come and welcome him to your office, try and, work out what their priorities are, timelines. I mean...
Definitely. So we would... if they weren't coming to Dubai, we would certainly have a call with them, go through everything, ask them the appropriate questions, manage their expectations as well. You know, they may have some ideas that aren't realistic. So we would have that conversation with them. In person would be great if they were in Dubai, have them in our office, and then we'd introduce them to an account manager that would basically manage everything for them, outline the whole process, the timelines, documents required, and then step them through everything and be their one point of contact from beginning to end.
Fantastic. Well, thanks both for joining me. Do reach out to Marie or Matt with any specific inquiries you may have.